In successful entrepreneurial management, you need to have two kinds of knowledge: customer knowledge and technical knowledge. On the technical side, you need to develop some kind of service which is superior and differentiated to help solve a customer problem in ways they can't get it solved anywhere else. But that's so hard with technology. It's moving so fast, it's so complex, it's hard to be an expert. But don't be deterred by the question. Reframe it. What exactly is the experience that your customer would like to have? And in order to answer that, you need to understand your customers well. Are they older or younger? Are they tech savvy or tech novices? Are they using Salesforce.com or are they using TikTok? What exactly is the experience they're having now that they're dissatisfied with, and what is the experience they'd rather have? Design the experience first. Then you can turn to technology and find the right solution, drill into it, become expert in a particular piece of it, and deliver that in a way that customer is convinced that you're the one to help them. It's customer knowledge first, technical knowledge second, although you need both. Become an expert, but only after you've identified the need that the customer needs to meet.
This is the Value Creators Podcast. Value creation is the sole purpose of any business and every business, and for all of us as entrepreneurs. Listen to great value creators as they share their successes, trials, and lessons learned. Join us as we explore how to think as value creators, how to act as value creators, and how to view business through the lens of value creation.
Our guest today is a successful harnesser of technology on behalf of his customers. He's Jason LaBaw. Let me read his credentials just so I get them right. He's the founder and CEO of Bonsai Media Group. That's a full-service internet marketing firm ranked as one of the top 15 SEO companies in the world. He learned technology through certification in web management and in AdWords and in Google Analytics. He focused his customer need knowledge in digital marketing communications. Now he teaches these topics at University of Washington's Foster School of Business and Western Washington University School of Business. Jason, welcome to the Value Creators Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Hunter.
We've got a lot to talk about today. You're a pioneer in some special edges of the technology world, and we want to explore technological change as it applies to business and how to cope with it. We believe that a lot of value lies in experiences, and you've got a lot of history in designing experiences. So we're going to explore both of those things, Jason.
Excellent.
So we have a general formula. It's a bit theoretical about how you build businesses, how you create value. And it's combining deep customer knowledge, really understanding your customer and what their needs are and what their preferences are, and then specialized technology knowledge. If you can put those together and create something unique, a uniquely valued experience, then that's a business. That's very general. It's not very specific. And there's a real challenge where I'd like to start, which is technology is changing and it feels like it's an accelerating rate of change. It's really hard to keep up. It's hard for businesses to change at the same rate of technology changes. So we're economists. We think about capital. You invest in capital, you whether it's a laptop or an AWS contract or whatever it might be, a piece of software, and then it's immediately out of date. The world has changed. So let's start with how businesses cope with that. You've coped with it all your life very successfully. How do businesses cope with that speed of change? What's your thinking there?
Well, I think there's a couple parts to that. One, I think, is in the planning phase. So really thinking about, build to budget versus budget to build. I think if you start with a budget in mind, you have the guardrails so that you can analyze different shiny objects as they inevitably will come, and then make design decisions or technical decisions about what functionality to include or not include. And I think kind of with that is clarity, defining a project ROI from the start. Because I think a lot of times it's great if a technology can make us more money or save us more money. And I think a lot of times we say, oh, great, If we don't reinvest in that technology, it becomes legacy technology, which often enterprises especially become very dependent on those legacy systems that then over many years become increasingly harder to move away from or to iterate on top of. And so I think, having a strategic budget set that if this project meets its ROI, great, then it's past step one. And then taking some of those savings or increased revenue to put towards iterating that technology over time. And that iteration may be building in new functionality, making the user interface better, but it may be needing to switch out in components of your technology or the product that you're using. You may have been using a database system and your business needs became more global and you had to switch to a more global distributed database system. And, so now having investment dollars to apply to that technology, I think is really beneficial. And the last thing I'll say is having a contingency plan because stuff comes up. I invested in a company called 6D AI, which really was hands down the most advanced visual positioning system. So if you wanted to position somebody outdoors, you use GPS and it's readily available and works really well. When you want to position somebody in an indoor location, it's a lot more difficult because GPS doesn't work and you have to use a visual positioning system to do so. Long story short, they got purchased by a much larger company, got made private. And, here we are as a, smaller app development company having to pivot pretty quickly. Luckily, we had, when we were evaluating vendors or technologies for this, we had a couple in our back pocket. So we were able to iterate fairly quickly. But having a contingency plan, I think, would be wise.
Yes, that's a good formula. You evaluate projects based on returning enough cash, enough ROI to be able to reinvest in either upgrading or the next thing. And you never get locked in. Is that the idea, that you constantly are available to change with the contingency plan, which is you don't know what's going to happen?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Okay, good.
there are ways to engineer technology. Like for instance, in a lot of applications, we call it N-tier applications. We've got a business logic layer, we've got a data access layer, we've got our, UI UX kind of visual layer. And I think having a good architecture for how your technology is implemented can allow you to be more nimble as the technologies that support each of those layers change out. You can change out the data access layer without impacting your business logic layer or your visual layer.
Yeah, and presumably you can connect new things to your architecture as time goes on and take some things out. Is that right? I'm not a technologist, but visually I can think of that.
That's exactly right.
That's the context. It's still a bit scary, but it's great context. And then we think about customers. The whole objective is being able to solve problems that really matter for customers and get the market rewards for doing that. What are customers thinking in that situation, in your experience, Jason? What are their kind of concerns and fears in this high-speed world of change? You've described something that's, you can cope very well because you're very knowledgeable. Maybe that's not always the case with your customers. How are they feeling?
Are we talking about businesses or are we talking about end users, consumers?
Let's think about business to business first and business consumers. So they have problems of how to work and how to run their businesses these days, or remote working versus not remote working, security, all those kinds of things. It's scary.
It is. There has been this talk about digital transformation. It's a buzzword. So I think for a lot of companies, these are things that they've thought about. And then something crazy happens and there's a global pandemic and it really expedites a lot of these companies' digital transformation plans. To the point that you made, it's really about focusing on their customers' needs, goals, preferences. I think for a lot of these companies, they can create competitive advantages by allowing their customers to pay their bills online, as an example, right? And so I think it's really about thinking about the customer, the end user of the application, and then designing an experience that's going to create a competitive advantage. And then as things change, being able to leverage what you've learned in the past and be able to apply it to the changes that you see coming in the future. And, I use an example for you. We work with a B2B IT solutions company, global We built their website, I want to say in 2018. And here we are 5 years later chatting with the CMO. And, I'm like, well, the website's been around for 5 years. Might be time that we start to at least think about what our next web experience will be, because web technologies have changed quite a bit. And, there's definitely a feeling of like, oh my goodness, already 5 years. Like, there's a lot of work in whether it be a website redesign or an application rebuild. And so again, I think a lot of it is just in planning and ensuring that budget is being allocated, or at least accrued, so that it can be allocated as the business needs it.
Well, that's great advice. And I also really admire what you said about if your direct customer is a business, you can really help them by thinking about their end user and their end user experience. Do you find you're able to do that better than some businesses? You have a more acute sense of experience in use than they do?
I think so. I like to think so. Hey, let's just say yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think there have been a few experiences in my life. I grew up in my dad's business. He owned a call center. So I kind of got a lot of early business experience sitting shotgun with him in his car. And then in college, while I was going to school, I also DJ'd and had a promotions business. And I think in that business, you're really thinking about the experience from the time that somebody opens the door of the venue, to who greets them, to how they're greeted, to what the experience is at this part, and kind of the flow of everything. And so I think a lot of those experiences have translated to designing software and digital experiences to have empathy for that end user. And a lot of times, my dad is 71 years old, and half the time he's the first person I go to test a lot of the solutions that we come up with, because if it's easy for him to use, generally speaking, it'll be easy for the general public. There are a ton of tools that have in communities that have come about, like usertesting.com, where we can design an interface, and instead of thinking or assuming that it will meet our target demographics needs and wants, we can actually test it out and see what they think about it before we ever launch it, and get that feedback earlier in the process. And then with analytics, we can, once the product is launched, we can create funnels and see how people are using our product, and then iterate towards a desired outcome. So if we desire more people to add this to their cart, we can engineer an experience that gets that.
That's another really insightful combination, Jason. So you used a word that is really important to us, empathy. And we say that's the critical skill in business, getting inside the customer's mind and understanding how they feel. Then you've added tools to help with empathy. But I'd still like to know how you get to be empathetic. I love the image of trying to put yourself in the mind of a 71-year-old, and presumably you can do that for an 8-year-old and a customer service rep. And tell us the secrets for empathy.
One is having conversations. In this digital world, it's easy to sit behind a screen, to look at a Nielsen report and data. And I think you lose a lot of the human element, where, like I said, whether it's an app or a website, we go through a pretty intensive discovery process where we'll interview, frontline workers, managers, customers, C-level, and really understand not just how the internal team thinks about the brand and the experience of the customer, but then how the customer views the brand and how they view the experiences they have with the customer. And it's incredibly insightful. Every single time, I feel like it's like Undercover Boss, things like that, where, as you're going into these businesses, you're uncovering all these insights that were just a conversation away. They were there the whole time, but we're all so busy in the world of work. We don't have the time to have those conversations. And thankfully, as a digital marketing agency, with the engagements with our clients, we get those opportunities and we learn a lot.
I love that. Again, using our academic language, that's qualitative data. It's subjective. It's human. It's not big data. It's not analytics. It's not computational. It's understanding people. And I love it that you're still able to do that.
Yeah, there is a use for both, right? I'm never a one trick pony, kind of try to use all the tools at my disposal to try to make the best educated guess or assumption that I can, but then also being nimble enough to iterate and improve as we launch products.
Well, let's get from the general to the specific, Jason. I've read a little bit about Bonsai Media Group, and you've always been on the cutting edge of technology, starting with digital visualizations, and now you've got AR and VR, and now you've got Social B, which is designing new experiences that customers can have. So how did you get into depth on those particular things, on the real cutting edge? Is that something that you committed to, you learned, or it broke over you? How did you
Yeah.
get that?
I think, well, one, I think some of it's nature. Like can remember getting in trouble at a very early age for taking apart my mom's receiver and whole audio setup in her apartment. And I've always just been curious about how things work. And then, really as it got into, more technology and growing up in my dad's business, I did everything from I was a janitor, I was in sales and marketing, I worked in the IT department, I answered the phones, I got to do a lot of different things. I always felt like, hey, there's, whether it's a completely new system or a tweak to a system, there's a better way to do this. And I think what drew me to technology is that technology does, I think, in a lot of ways offer better ways to do things. Not always. Again, I think, like I said, conversations and some of those things are really important. Yeah, I think some of those early experiences. And then, I went to school for marketing and computer science. And, when I graduated, I built websites and apps for SMBs. I started a digital agency, Bonsai, in 2009. Through that, we had a client, just as an example, who they wanted us to run a trivia app for them, or to create a trivia app for them. And it was kind of like, that's kind of a cool idea, but there's already a ton of people already doing that online. Like, how can we take this concept and what are you really trying to achieve here? Which for them, they were trying to A, collect a lot of user information, B, to engage them and immerse them in their brand and educate them on their features, advantages, and benefits. And so what we did is instead of just trivia, we did a social contest where if you checked into one of their locations, it would unlock a trivia, a photo, a video challenge. So it created this almost blend between the digital and physical world of a scavenger hunt and through the storyline of a brand. And so from that, around the same time, actually, I was working with a 3D product imaging company. What they were really focused on is, if a single image gets a conversion rate of, say, 2%, multiple images get a conversion rate of, say, 3%, a video gets a conversion rate of 4%. What could a 3D product that the user can spin and zoom in and really investigate that product, what conversion rate could be had from that? So I served on the board of that. Bonsai built their 3D viewer and some of their other experiences. So I've got these two things going on at the same time. I've got this kind of blend of the digital and physical world through these scavenger hunts, and I've got this 3D world where I just kind of smashed them together and thought about how the digital and physical world are going to collide. The first use case was really for me, can I give somebody a tour, whether it be indoor or outdoor, say a hike or a city tour, or indoor like a museum or an aquarium, and have a tour guide give that tour once, placing their video content, trivia, all that stuff where it exists in the physical space, and thereby make exploring the world as fun as playing a video game, with the goal of hopefully influencing and encouraging people to get out and explore the real world around them, because I think that's what we as humans naturally need. And through that, kind of the passion of really creating these immersive experiences in augmented reality, got into building 3D product configurators so that people could configure a $200,000 boat, or a 3D product tours so that people could really understand what are the unique features and benefits of this product. How will this feature affect me? And using boating as an example, boating is if you're a first-time boat buyer, it can be a pretty intimidating experience. What's the stern? What's a ballast? What's a rudder? There's a lot of things that you just don't know because you don't know. And so creating a 3D immersive tour, and there's also the benefit of the pandemic happened, which kind of changed everything and people couldn't just go down to a showroom. So there really became a big need for this type of technology to fill that role. And, we've created augmented reality product tours, we've done metaverse showrooms and just all sorts of things. And so I think for me, and as this cutting edge piece of what I really look at as AR and a little bit of VR and then AI, that's kind of my, holy grail, if you will. I'd love to say that when I was, set out in this career that I knew that this is where I would go, but that it couldn't be further from the truth. I had no idea, no concept. And I think it's a lot of trying things, learning things, and being willing to dream and pursuing those dreams. And we're far ways away from the metaverse. Augmented reality and the current paradigm of holding up your phone is not ideal, I would say. So we really are still a ways out. Yeah.
You've illustrated, again, one of our conceptual ideas, which is if you combine things in new ways, value can emerge as a result of that. You can't always tell. 3D, AR, VR websites, you've done a brilliant combination. But I wanted to pick up on what you said about we don't know the future. There's a sort of a feeling that AR and VR have been overhyped. People think that about Meta, I believe, that they overpromised and underdelivered. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people deeply engaged in it. So I know you can't tell the future, Jason, but what do you think the trends are? Where do you think it's going? Is that going to be our life? I heard you say something about mixing with people, where I'm wearing glasses and there's some data on the other person appears, and that helps me start a conversation that's combining the real world and the digital world. Is that where we're going?
I sure hope so. And I say that because what scares me more than anything is a world where future generations are locked in a room and are immersing themselves in virtual worlds. If anything, on the VR side of things, I'm not a strong proponent for it. I am to a degree because I do think that there are people who can't necessarily go visit the Louvre, as an example, whether that be financially or just physically. And so I do think that VR can and does have a place in our future. But I think augmented reality and AI and some of these voice enabled technologies, that's what I think is really going to change this world. And, whether it's in work, if I'm in a meeting and I've got my, say, Apple glasses, my augmented reality glasses, and as someone else is talking, the Siri like voice enabled technology is listening and providing me with, fact checking or providing me with stats or augmenting my reality, giving me information that's contextual to the conversation and what's going on, I will have a distinct competitive advantage in that meeting. And I akin it to some of the early iPhones. I mean, just having an iPhone at my disposal in a meeting to quickly look things up gave me a competitive advantage. It'll be the same thing, but on a 10x, exponentially more valuable, just because it will be connected to AI. We will be able to overlay information to, again, provide context to what the user's looking at. And so, I think the meta hype or the metaverse hype, I think the one thing that a lot of people forget is that Zuckerberg called it kind of a 10-year vision. And at the same time, they were releasing their Oculus, and a lot of people are thinking, oh, that's the metaverse. It's always these marketing jargons that I think they, in an attempt to simplify a concept, they confuse everybody. And where I think the underlying technologies really deserve some serious thought and consideration by the general population. I mean, we should be talking about giving computers vision. How is that going to change the world? And so I think, the metaverse, as I think Zuckerberg and a lot of others have defined it, I think it's all to come. I think what's going to be most important are the leaders in this space who are going to shape it, whether it be self-regulated or government regulated, to ensure that it's done so in a beneficial way for humanity.
You use the term storytelling. There's a lot of trend in business that's much more important than what you called marketing summaries, vision and mission.
Mm-hmm.
If we can tell a story, if we can tell an engaging story and get people involved in it, and it's not a summary, it's an exploration. This could happen, but that could happen, but here's the story that we're all participating in. You also mentioned video games. I've always been fascinated by that idea that business and computing is going to become like a video game. As you say, visualization is important. There's data in there. Stuff can happen. that's storytelling. So that's a wondering kind of observation on my part. But tell us a story of the future. How would you tell that story in an engaging, happy way?
I like to envision a world where future generations are able to discover. I think a big part of human nature is discovery and exploration. And I think that these technologies can play a big role in that. I think on the education piece, whether it's learning to play guitar or learning how a volcano works, again, I think a combination of these technologies can make a big impact in that. But where I would really like to see these technologies have an impact and where I think it can really heal a lot is in human connection. I think that's really important. I always walk a mile in another's shoe, I think is a really important thing. And if I can go to, whether it be Kenya or to, Saudi Arabia or to England or just anywhere in the world, and I can walk the path of somebody who lives there, I can gain a greater appreciation and understanding and empathy for that individual. And similarly in the workspace, I think, a lot of these just virtual meetings where, half the time everybody's got their screens off, which I think is a real missed opportunity. There's, the one benefit of these virtual meetings is that, I can see you, you can see me, you can see the background, and we can learn about each other and share personally. I think the storyline for the future is, and with these augmented reality and AI, the most positive one that I can see is we're able to focus more on connecting humans and making it, instead of having two beers in order to have a conversation, maybe providing an icebreaker activity that these two people can interact with and kind of gamify it to make it fun. I even think for work that pretty soon work will be gamified. That's something that we're actually doing at Bonsai, is working to gamify the work so that we can be more efficient and have more fun doing it.
Just give me a little bit more depth on gamify. It used to be crude in the past about you get points for doing stuff. I'm sure it's advanced a lot more since then. How do you use that term, gamify?
Yeah, so I think in the context of, like, for instance, a networking event where, say, you and I are at this event, we're both wearing augmented reality glasses. There could be some anxiety in approaching somebody and what am I going to say? And are we going to have any connections where, I might be able to see that, there's an icon, let's say it's snow skis. And so that's a indication that you like snow skiing, and I can approach you and have a conversation about snow skiing while ultimately getting to a business conversation. And then, the more people at this networking event that I approach and learn about, I get points as I go. There's a leaderboard for that event. Now it really shifts people's minds and gets everybody to really network and get to know each other, which I think is a lot of times the goal of those networking events. As far as like gamifying work, I think that's just really, as a business owner myself, getting clear on what really matters. Like, do I care about the number of hours, or do I care about the lines of code or the number of websites or the number of apps that are produced in a given day, week, month? And then providing incentives that reward people for beating a benchmark or winning a month for an objective or an initiative that's important for the organization.
Yeah, I love your vision of combining the digital and the real world in a clever way, but making it social, as you say, getting out into the world. You're not living in a dark room staring into your phone. So I think that's a happy vision. One more question about thinking about other entrepreneurs, Jason, who might want to live in this kind of edge of technology. It feels edgy to me, but I'm not in your world. But here you are with AR and VR and AI. Does it feel like it's high risk? Does it feel like it's too challenging place to be, or is it, you talk very calmly, is it a smooth and easy place to be?
I've got you fooled then. No, it is, look, I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to have extreme conviction in your vision, because for every good day, there's going to be 10 tough days. The more of those days that you have, the easier it becomes. You start to realize that the unknown isn't that bad. As bad as you think it is, it rarely ever is. And so I think right now for entrepreneurs, it's, especially in technology, it's one of the most exciting times ever. I think, for a long time, the web brought a lot of opportunity, but the web was pretty constricted in its capabilities. It required custom coding every page. And then, that started to change and we had dynamic pages, and now we got AI creating pages, creating content, and being able to classify images, medical images, to understand what is a cancerous cell better than what a human can do, right? And the promise of technology is becoming more and more real today than I think it ever has in the past. And so I think for entrepreneurs, to your point when we started, it really is about having a deep knowledge and understanding of the customer's needs, wants, walking a mile in their shoes, understanding what the technology is capable of, and then applying that technology to solve that problem. It's wild right now. I mean, like I said, with computer vision and AI, you can do things unimaginable just 3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, wild with opportunity, it sounds like you have a very inspiring vision and inspiring way about you, Jason. So where should we send people to go learn about you?
Yeah, I would say, you can either Google us or go to bonsaimediagroup.com. That's BONSAI, as in the plant, not the warrior call. And then, our social B is socialb.me. A cool little tidbit I'll give you is we're releasing in the next week here a AI travel itinerary creator, which will be available on socialb.me, where you can, say, I want to do a 3-day vacation to Hawaii with interest being scuba diving, rock climbing, whale watching. The AI will create an itinerary that is specific to your interests, location, and even the dates. And you can find that at socialb.me.
Exciting. Well, Jason, thank you very much. I tend to think of our speedy technological change is a little bit scary, and you've turned it inspirational and exciting and positive. So thank you very much. And I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs listening will get that same inspiration from you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Hunter.
This has been another episode of the Value Creators Podcast. Thanks for listening. You can visit thevaluecreators.com for links and resources related to this episode. And check out hunterhastings.com for more content on entrepreneurial business management based on value creation principles.